Where did you go to school?
And here's your
What do you think of what's going on right now, mate?
These evil little invisible parasites.
Satan-worshipping Freemason morons.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
We're not run by factions.
Get the fuck out of camera!
There are much more powerful international forces in play.
Is this pink eye? Is this what pink eye is? I don't fucking know what's happening.
Please go outside and look at the moon quickly.
It's been crazy, guys, but guess what? It's how it is, mate.
Mate, because I want to do it slowly.
But I ain't spending any time on it.
Welcome, patrons, to another episode of the Conditional Release program, Overflow. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you once again for dipping into your pocket and giving us a little bit of loose change. It means a lot, and it keeps me from crying. And Joel from crying, you're crying because you've got COVID again. No, you haven't got COVID.
I'm a
you're
close contact. But I can't help but to feel like, is that a fever? Am I hot? I'm not sure if I'm hot.
I know
is
what
my
you mean.
throat okay?
I had that paranoia last week, actually, or 2 weeks ago. My daughter had a close contact, and I thought, and I did come down with a bit of a sniffle.
Yeah,
and I thought for days it was COVID.
I feel so tired, but I'm also fine. I had a PCR test at a rat. I'm only drinking mid-strength. I mean, I'm doing everything I fucking can.
Right. That's enough about your miserable existence, Joe. We want to thank our patrons. And look, we're just going to kick off the overflow today with a discussion about not the week Donald Trump's had, the last 3 weeks he's had. It's just the last.
Has been bad.
We're dipping into a bit of November and a little bit of December here. And since this is from Maggie Haberman from the New York Times. She said, since emerging from the November election with a string of humiliating losses to show for his pretensions to be a midterm kingmaker, ouch, Mr. Trump has entertained a leading white supremacist, that might be Nick, and a celebrity anti-Semite, at his South Florida mansion. He has suggested, that is Trump, terminating the Constitution. That's a little unfair, Joel. This is word for word from the New York Times. He didn't suggest terminating. He just suggested terminating a bit of it, didn't he?
That's right. It was more just, whatever has to be done for us to have another election for no really good reason except for my ego. That's the part of the Constitution we've got to do away with. Just
that bit. And a few other bits. And then it'll be okay. And so he has suggested terminating the Constitution, the one that a president swears to preserve, protect and defend. There is that. In furtherance of his long-running lie that the 2020 election was stolen from him. Yep, so bit of a bad week there. So a bit of a bad 3-week period there. His business was just convicted. To be honest, this wasn't, this is just recently. This is just this week. Business was just convicted on all 17 counts, in a tax fraud case in New York City.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
With fines likely to be somewhere in the order of $1.6 million. That's greenbacks, folks.
Yeah, and you've got to have that money as well.
Yeah,
you can't just be like, I'll pay you in campaign contribution. I'll endorse your candidate. No, sorry, money.
Well, there were reports this week saying that this was, in places like WAPO and New York Times and stuff, so this is sort of chicken feed for Trump, and it probably is a $1.6 million fine. But it still has to be paid, and it's money you've got to get from somewhere.
Yeah.
And have to get within a fine period, within a finite period.
Yeah.
So the 17 counts of tax fraud, that was a number of his executives, including the whistleblower who didn't whistleblow on Trump, his former CFO, who will now serve, it's anticipated, about 6 months in jail if the judge agrees, after agreeing to basically pour a bucket on, not the kids and not Donald, but other executives with
of course, yes.
Organisations. So they're all looking at a little bit of jail time. And of course, just the other day, just yesterday, wasn't it? Tuesday. Trump's hand-picked candidate for the Senate in Georgia, Herschel Walker. I'm going to miss that guy. The football star, Mr. Trump, employed in a brief stint as pro football team owner in the 1980s, went down to defeat Tuesday night after a campaign, this is according to Haberman, that will be remembered as a string of scandals and self-inflicted wounds. That's actually quite kind.
Yes,
that's
it is
a very
quite
kind
yes.
expression for the sort of campaign Herschel Walker ran. It didn't start well, and this is well before the runoff, but it didn't start well when the campaign proper was underway, when it was found that he was basically anti-abortion in all respects. That's in the event of rape, in the event of incest, conceptions driven through those offences, still opposed to all of that. And then it emerged that, of course, he'd actually paid for abortions in women that he knocked up along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it got worse because he pretended to be a police officer.
Yes, he did, which was bizarre.
Showing his badge at a debate and being told, there are no props here, you can't bring props, put the props down.
It.
As he showed his sheriff's badge, which he'd received as a sort of honorarium or an honorary title, and that led to him sort of talking about some of the hard work he'd done in law enforcement, which didn't exist. He lied about his academic record and having graduated, I think, from Georgia State Union, GSU, as Georgia State University. Lied about completing his. He never did, of course. He went straight into pro ball, didn't finish.
Okay.
Also mentioned that he'd had, hard work within the military, and it turned out that, he was never a military man, and he had never really said that. But
of course,
but he was also involved in some really dubious work that skinned veterans. So
good.
Once it emerged that he was, that he'd gone out there to help everybody, it turned out that he was just a speaker at various events and highly paid out of veterans funds drives that ended up sucking money out of veterans.
Nice one.
So it was hilarious campaign, handpicked by Donald can't even blame his wife for this one. The Pennsylvania candidate, Joel, help me out here. There was the.
What?
Nimitz,
that was Herschel
Nimitz
Walker.
Oz, Dr. Oz.
Oh, Pennsylvania. Yeah.
That was in Pennsylvania. Well, that was his wife's fault. But
Apparently,
who's to blame for Herschel Walker?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess he was holding out for the runoff before he blamed someone else.
Yeah, so he's had a shocker. It must be said. I went through some polling figures today. In fact, there's quite a lot published. And still, Republicans would, in a primary, at this stage anyway, and I think Trump's vote will drop off, but in a primary, if a primary was held now, he'd probably win it.
Yeah.
And, I mean, look, his fortunes are pretty much falling across the board in polling, but he'd still win with DeSantis sort of coming up close behind. But
okay.
But there are. I think he can probably put something like 40% of the Republican vote in his pocket.
Okay.
So it's if he loses the primary, if he's in jail,
he's going to take a lot of people with him.
If he misses out on this, what's he going to do? Is he going to split the party?
Probably.
This is a man who really does bear a grudge, doesn't he?
He could run an independent campaign quite easily.
Well, that's the least likely of the options, mate, because that requires enormous amount of money and organisational.
Yeah, you don't get the party machine behind you, which is a lot.
So you can't. You haven't got offices in downtown. Downtown Hoboken. You haven't got. It's a lot of money and a lot of logistics.
I feel like you're following a political perspective as opposed to a insane idiot perspective.
The insane part is the revenge lust. When he gets rolled in the primaries or before, is the revenge lust he's going to feel.
It looks like the Democrats are going to do well next election. That's what I'll say.
Well, we don't know what's happening there either. It's either Grandpa Joe or a cast of, relative nobodies.
Fucking spanner could win versus Trump or DeSantis with no Trump supporters.
Yeah. So, I mean, you would say DeSantis would probably stand a good thing. I think the bookies some of the bookies anyway, might have installed him as favourite now.
I would imagine
that you pay much attention to that at this stage. The Betfair guys might be sniffing around the Trumpster again.
Yeah. They might be a little bit shy when it comes to online gambling. I believe their main issue is that online gambling is corrupt, and they don't want to borrow it because it was all rigged. So, I don't think they're going to be betting much because they don't have faith in the market anymore. Not that they bet on the wrong guy and lost. It's that it's all very corrupt.
Ah, yes, of course. And look, we just want to wrap this up by saying, rest in peace, the political ambitions of Herschel Walker. It's not as if we hardly knew you. We actually knew you too much. You know, we got too much of a look at you.
That's what his kid said, was like, dude, this is going to go badly for you. Once they find out who you
was
are.
About 6 weeks ago, yeah.
You know, you're abusive, you're an asshole. People are going to realize that. And when they do, it's all over for you.
Yeah.
It's great.
It was just a fabulous thing, and handpicked by the kingmaker, Donald Trump. Beautiful. All right, Joe, what's happening in high fashion? What's happening in haute couture? I know, just looking down the camera, I cannot see you waist. I cannot see your waist or below the waist, but I would like to think that you're wearing a pair of $1,500 tracky dacks with the Balenciaga label blazoned all over them.
I will take this opportunity to tell patrons that if you get your friends on board, maybe that could be a reality. But as it stands, I'm wearing fucking Kmart shorts. So stick that up your ass.
Yeah.
Thank you, patrons. You are the reason why I'm wearing Kmart shorts.
I've got the big W's. I've got the big W's on too. So I have to admit that until 3 days ago, I didn't know what Balenciaga was.
I
didn't know it
did,
was
but
a
only
label.
because of students in the area. They love that shit.
I know the label's been around for more than 100 years in Spain, and
I don't think it's 100 years. I think there's the guy died in like the 70s, but I'm not sure if it's an
1909, Joel. I think
1909. Really?
Yeah, according to its wiki page. Anyway, let me just find it for you.
Okay.
1919.
1919.
It was founded by Spanish designer Cristobal Balenciaga in San Sebastian, Spain.
He died in like the 70s or something.
Yeah, a lot of these.
Mental.
Oh.
Lived for a while.
Carl, he wasn't his spring chicken. A lot of them leave because they sort of live very pampered lives, I imagine.
Surrounded by children, I suppose.
So it's become heavily corporatized in recent times, and is now sort of, Balenciaga is one of the, this is something I didn't know until a few days ago, it has become one of the most renowned labels in haute couture, Joe.
Yes. Well, basically what it is here is we have an established fashion house and a huge satanic panic, and you know, it sort of follows that these things would, you know, sort of clash into each other, because we'll get to this later, but the art and fashion world are completely fucked in the head, and we shouldn't necessarily stand back and be like, oh, we should be like, hold on. But in order to understand why we should be putting a bit of a red light on this and not necessarily completely writing off these sort of Q-adjacent QAnon concerns, is the story behind this, which is that on November 16th, for some fucking bizarre reason, Balenciaga, which is, of course, this high-end fashion brand who, you know, compete with the really high dollars, like, you know, $2,000 handbags that look like chip packets and dumb shit like that.
$1,600 tracky decks, mate.
Insane. Just fucking insane. And I live near a university with a ton of foreign students, and basically they're all wearing this Balenciaga shit. I don't know if it's fake or not. Who fucking knows? But either way, they love that shit. It's a weird status thing, blah, blah, blah. So, like, I'm familiar with the whole thing. One thing I wasn't familiar with is what their role in the fashion world was. And now I know they're in that, as you say, haute couture. I can't really say it. And they usually do these artistic sort of campaigns and things like that. But what they've done this time, which you may or may not have heard of, is they did a campaign called the Balenciaga Gift Shop, which featured children with handbags that look like teddy bears in bondage gear.
Yeah,
and
they're teddy bear bondage handbags, Joe.
Yeah,
that's what they are.
And
they had a bunch
these
of
exist,
sad-looking children advertising.
Well, the pictures are really fucking weird. One of them is basically a child lying on a couch with this strange, vacant, unsettling look on her face, surrounded by this sort of random items like crockery, empty wine glasses, which people are sort of up in arms about, but I think are quite incidental because there's a whole bunch of random just debris around. And it's just weird shit. But it's all for sale, and it's a part of this gift shop thing. And all these items are like $500-$600 for no good reason. The teddy bears that are like the bondage teddy bears that everyone's freaked out about aren't even prominent in one of the shots. But in one of the shots, it is because she's standing up and holding it. So you sort of see the teddy bear in the background and you think, oh, that's a bit weird. Then you see her holding it and you're like, okay, you're up, you're wet there.
You're looking melancholy. And,
not happy at all.
And look, look. Actually, this was part of their what they call their gift
shop.
Gift shop.
It's
catalog.
A campaign they're running.
And so yes, it's just online sales company, and be in their stores and all that sort of stuff. But it had been released. It had been released last month. So this hubbub didn't start at all. I mean, this was.
It started
not initially. No,
very close to the date.
It was a kid who sort of released some stuff on TikTok 2 weeks after the campaign actually started that went, and everyone started freaking out about it.
Yeah, but that's pretty close to the campaign being launched.
Yeah, but it's 2 weeks. I mean, it's been out there for 2 weeks and everyone, all people
wandering
around Balenciaga were going, oh, no, this is fine.
Like,
right?
No one looks at this stuff. Basically, it's one of those things where they release these catalogs and a whole bunch of yes men in the art world look at that and go, oh, yes, that is really a reflection on the way in which children are being abused by consumerism and the way in which consumer objects have no real meaning and there's no soul in them. And then some fucking QAnon buddy sees it and goes, oh, my God, I'm looking at this with no nuance. And now I see Satan. And then makes a TikTok and the whole thing.
Look, the company's apologise, and I'm sure you're going to get to that in a little while. But the issue the issue is that most people would look at this and go, "That's not quite right."
No, there's something
this is
wrong
a little bit beyond the pale, and this is what's called shockvertising. This is kind of what these high end fashion houses do.
Yeah, they do.
They do. I mean, this is why we got basically runway models with their heroin chic. I mean, they did Balenciaga did an exhibition with models that were covered in mud in order to sort of promote the idea of the Ukrainian war and stuff. What? I mean, it's all very fucking Nazi. And and it's all just based around obscene amounts of wealth,
Yes, it is. It is. It really is. And they waste all this money. They charge stupid amounts of money for this sort of stuff. And I'll go into this later, but basically, this gives them the sort of cred to be able to then charge for these pieces. But at the end of the day, most people who buy this sort of Balenciaga bullshit buy it more because Kim Kardashian wears it than the art credibility they have in this high-end fashion world. But without that high-end fashion world cred,
Kim's put her connection with the company on ice. I think she's just waiting to see.
on ice, but she hasn't severed it.
She hasn't severed, no.
Yeah. The other thing they did in this one was it was 5 days after the campaign. This was a separate campaign entirely, which was quite extensive and had several pieces in it. But the ones that stood out quite well because it was called the Guard Robe for the 2023 season. And someone noticed that the picture depicting a handbag was on a pile of documents that had pages lifted from a 2008 Supreme Court decision, which is US versus Williams. And this examined whether laws banning the promotion of child pornography curtailed the First Amendment freedom of speech rights they have. So basically, the case is about a federal child porn law that criminalizes advertising or promotion of child porn. And Mr. Williams here was done by an undercover agent after promising he had pictures of his underage daughter, which he did, but he could have actually been charged under this law, even if he didn't. It's a matter of basically just saying, I've got kiddie porn. That's illegal in the States. Now, he thought that might very well be a violation of the First Amendment, which is that you can't get in trouble for saying stuff. But it turns out you can. I don't really know the reasoning. I didn't look at the judgment. But at the same time, there's quite a strong message here. And I'll say, if you're bragging about having kiddie porn, I have very little sympathy for you. And if you've got it, even less. But he wanted to challenge the validity of the law. He has the right to do that, even though he's a kiddie fiddler. And basically the charge was upheld and the law was upheld.
Yes.
This is the thing.
It's a long and torturous process, but yes.
But this is a very important aspect of this, I think, because the satanic panic hysteria has been surrounding the fact that this case is about child pornography.
Yeah.
Because the usual QAnon crowd aren't ones for nuance. But the case itself talks about the Supreme Court upholding this law that makes it illegal to promote child porn in any way, even if the child pornography in question is simply a concept. Is it possible that some of the contractors involved in the shoot actually found the previous campaign, or maybe previous campaigns to that, I don't really know, to be tasteless and awful, verging on child pornography, and decided to send Balenciaga a hidden message? I mean, there's a possibility of that, I think. But either way, this does not appear to advocate for child porn. On face value, it actually does the opposite. But of course, why let the details get in the way of a good satanic panic? Because that's what they're getting up to. And, you know,
what else was there, Joe?
Clicks.
What else was there?
Well,
what were the other props that were there?
That's the main two ones. There is another one, which I'll get to in a second.
Right.
But they were the main two things. So one of the things that's interesting is that Balenciaga have apologized and then claimed to be initiating a $25 million lawsuit against people involved in the handbag promotion, which was then withdrawn, of course, probably because the photographer involved in the teddy bear campaign, he was there saying basically this was all their idea, which would be the same case with the handbag as well. For them to then turn around and sue them, I mean, it's going to be a really tricky thing to do. But also, I have a feeling they're trying to avoid that
in the legal papers, in what's been filed, they were told that all documents that were available there were kind of nonsense documents. They were prop documents.
Yeah, and we'll get to that in a second.
This is a company that dresses sets for them.
Yes, exactly.
So people understand them. So people understand what's going on. So the people who dress the sets actually did put this. Actually did put this judgment, which went all the way to the Supreme Court, as to whether publishing child pornography was protected.
This is purely about the promotion of child pornography.
It's very strange stuff that's gone into the set.
It is very strange, but we'll go into that in a sec. Basically, this is the apology, which is that they say, we sincerely apologise for any offence our holiday campaign may have caused. And this is the one for the bears, by the way. Our plush bear bags should not have been featured with children in this campaign. We have immediately removed the campaign from all platforms. So that's for the one that had fucking doped out looking children with bears.
Yeah. Which bears in bondage handbags.
The genuinely disgusting one. Then you've got the one with the documents under the handbag, which as I said, I think is very ambiguous as to what the message is, and it quite possibly is the right one. And it says, we apologise for displaying unsettling documents in our campaign. We take this matter very seriously and are taking legal action against the parties responsible for creating the set and including unapproved items for our Spring 23 campaign photo shoot. We strongly condemn abuse of children in any form. We stand for children's safety and well-being. Which I think is interesting because we've got these documents that feature a Supreme Court ruling that upholds the law that prohibits the promotion of child porn, which may or may not be a subversive message from a contractor who doesn't like the brand's campaigning with children. This is met with legal action and stern words, whereas the shoot with the kids just gets a bit of a slap on the wrist from the PR department. I mean, that's a bit fucking cooked, really. But, like, the $25 million lawsuit, that wasn't against the Bears. That was against the production company that staged a handbag shoot for their
North 6
Guard Road. Yeah. Yeah,
so
that's
they're
the one.
basically set designers. Yeah.
Yeah. And, like, you know, it's a big contract, blah. But, I mean, like, fucking hell.
It's a huge amount of wank. You know, can you imagine the budget on a film shoot for Balenciaga? Just
I
think
think
about
Nicole
that
Kidman was involved. Bella Hadid, another, like, Instagram sort of model, was in there.
Right.
There'd be shitloads of stupid money. And, like, such pointless money too. Like, it really is. You may as well have burned it in a bin. And now it's all being withdrawn anyway. But yeah, so basically the summons that was going towards these handbag guys who did the horrible thing of including these documents, which, like I say, aren't advocating for child pornography, they said that the set designer engaged in inexplicable acts and omissions that were malevolent or at the very least extraordinarily reckless. And, of course, this is the thing of, you know, the brand claiming the documents were placed in the campaign photographs without their knowledge. Fair enough. And that's what's led to these false accusations between Balenciaga and child pornography, which isn't really the case. the false accusations, or, false accusations, are really from the kid holding a teddy bear, looking fucking traumatized. I mean, this thing here is just like an Easter egg. So the people involved are keeping fairly quiet, and they were contacted by the New York Times, North 6, the company you just mentioned. And they're the ones who do the production details. They do catering, permits, and crew, but they're basically the set designers, and they declined to comment, which is fair enough because you're pretty cagey right now. But then, but a week after Balenciaga's initial court filing, basically they just said, no, there's no longer taking legal action. Sounds mostly like they took this legal action just to say they're doing something. And the lawyers probably said the whole way,
has
no
it been
chance
withdrawn?
of success. It has been withdrawn.
It has been withdrawn.
Yes,
Okay.
it has. It was withdrawn very, very quickly because when it comes to a week after the initial court filing, I mean, I only really got in halfway through this. So it seemed like the court filing was news. And then all of a sudden the news was, it's no longer a thing. So the claim is the documents were props, and we were talking about this before, rented from a company, and by coincidence, they turned out to be legal documents, likely from a television drama. So they've just got boxes of these documents around. They just randomly grabbed a box.
That's what it is.
Do we fucking believe that, though?
If it was done, it was entirely inadvertent.
You reckon?
But there are some other things. Yeah, but go on. Yeah, other things in those. The other props are a little bit concerning as well.
Let's flesh that out, because like the next thing is going to be the book. So don't go on the book. We've got the book coming. But what's this?
Oh, well, there are various artworks and so forth that are, sort of dancing around the issue there. Let me see. New York Times, there was a particular artist.
You're going for the book, aren't you?
No. It's not the book.
Okay, so I'll explain the book and then we'll go from there, because I think you might be going to the book. So there is a book in the background of two of the images of the Spring 23 campaign featuring a model in an office, and it's a book by Michael Bormans, who I also haven't heard of, but now I have, and I could have lived without it. He's a Belgian painter whose work includes a troubling 2017 series called Fire from the Sun, which depicts naked toddlers, some of them castrated, playing in a group and at times alone. That's just a quote. Like, somehow that's okay in the art world, but there's probably some sort of profound symbolism in there with virtuous notions about how exploiting children's really bad and blah, blah, blah. But on face value, it's just something that's really shocking and really quite unpleasant. And I'm not saying you can't do that or it should be somehow banned. But what I am saying is that if someone gets upset looking at that, I'm not going to be upset with them. It's
I'm
quite
saying
reasonable.
that a set dresser, and look, these things are looked at through almost like through a microscope, all the way through Balenciaga's creative people, and all the way to their.
You'd think so, yeah.
They are basically looking over this stuff on light boxes, and this thing is highly, highly planned. So they must have known. And I'm just thinking set dressers are just, as we said before, just throwing things around, making them look. To them, the documents are material, might have something to do with children, but yeah, that's about as far as they've gone. I mean, overtly, if they're actually putting down a book like, is it the Cremaster Cycle? Is that the one you? Oh God, is there something? Too?
Maybe that is, yeah, because it's saying here. I just ripped this from mainstream media that it includes this troubling work. It's probably what the book is called, but yeah, it's just full of fucked up art, basically.
Toddlers engaged in playful but mysterious acts with sinister overtones and insinuations of violence. That's according to the David Zwirner Gallery.
Cool.
But yeah, so it's hard to know if that's been deliberately. If the set's been deliberately dressed, are they taking the piss that way?
It's entirely possible that it is sort of coincidental, because it is just the fact that the art world is a fucked up place, and Balenciaga is trying to be that kind of subversive brand. It's a part of their sort of edgy. Sort of image.
That's what I'm getting at. That it was a sort of deliberately edgy move, but not.
Yes, that's what I would say. Not realizing that one of the artworks in the book would be something to do with children that could then be turned around to be something about pedophilia. I imagine that level of nuance is something that you only find with QAnon types with infinite spare time and a burning desire to get clout in the online world. Because let's not mistake in the fact that This satanic panic is driven by clout chasers.
Anyway, they've dropped the action. Balenciaga's dropped the action. That's actually big news because, I mean, there may be some contractual issues there about, liability that might put all the liability with Balenciaga, though I doubt it.
Probably has got no chance of success. I imagine what happened is basically they've got no real basis to sue because they can sit there and say it's malevolence, they can say it's negligence, blah, 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 but at the end of the day, Balenciaga's the motherfuckers who published it. And they didn't look, apparently.
It would disclose a number of things that they wouldn't want to be disclosed, and that is the brief, this detailed brief, what actually took place at the photo shoot. They wouldn't want Balenciaga.
There'd be so much discovery involved.
Ooh.
It's just something like clearly they've had a chat with some lawyers and just gone, let's not do this. My gut feeling is they did this as a virtue signal to say we are taking action. But like I said, the fact they're doing it against the guys who brought the documents and not standing up against the fact that they had produced something which was somewhat suggestive with children involved. They were more angry about the documents that talk about a Supreme Court ruling that actually stood up for the rights of children in the face of child pornographers. The math isn't working for me here at all. But like I say, I'm looking at the nuance of this, and I don't think there's a lot of nuance being taken into account here. They're taking into the nuance of the works themselves and then extrapolating nonsense from it, I think. Whereas, of course, the bondage bears is bad. But one thing that we did have, I was talking about this on Twitter, and the excellent Emily McCulloch-Child, who we've had on the show before about Aboriginal affairs and stuff like that, she tweeted a photo of a piece that read, "What would our public collections look like if we divested them of sex pests and pedophiles?" which is written across a large canvas. And I think that is really something worth considering because we give the art and fashion world a massive free pass for being full of predators and fucking weirdos because apparently it's okay to be a predator and a weirdo if you're in that space. But, I mean, the idea of a Me Too ripping those worlds apart is, to me, on the cards, if not overdue.
Yeah, look, that's probably right. There are things that really get me about this, and the first thing is that there's a hashtag called Cancel Balenciaga. I mean, this tells us for certain now that the left does not own cancel culture.
Oh, not at all.
The right wants Balenciaga and everyone who's ever crossed their fucking doorstep, crossed their threshold, to pay a hard price. And people, whoever cleared this, whoever stamped this, whoever signed off on this, they should be cancelled. I've seen all the tweets. It's quite nuts.
Yeah.
And it is a gross overreaction. The other thing I'd also say is these photographs might have been seen by a very small group of people who follow Balenciaga.
Weird art
but
fashion
now
people.
Everyone's seen them.
Not only that, but like when it comes to Balenciaga, for example, public facing, their Instagram tends to be seasonal. So recently they wiped all of their Instagram and then they put up this campaign. And a whole big QAnon thing was, well, they fucking wiped their Instagram. They're trying to cover their tracks. No, this is what they do. I mean, this is their thing because they live in these sort of momentary bubbles where people are meant to see these things momentarily. There'd be print catalogs and things like that, and they probably go to people with fucking high net worth and nobody else. These $1 million campaigns are going to people who will spend $1 million on Balenciaga gear on a Tuesday and not blink because that's what this world is about, and that's just that's not us. We don't understand it. I won't try to understand it.
When we started talking about this, Joel, you and I, and you were filling me in because I, again, Balenciaga? What is it? How do you spell that? I was completely out of the loop on this sort of stuff. Tell me about the artist. Tell me about the photographer. We started talking about the photographer.
Yeah.
At that time, and so the photographer would have the ability to look at the set. Look at the people on the set, children holding bondage bears, and going,
"Nah,
this is really not for me."
Yeah, just go, nah.
Yeah, but the photographer's name, he's had a bit of a rough ride since. His name's Galimbetti.
Yep.
And he is basically had to go to ground.
He's being cancelled. Basically what happened was apparently he was told it was going to be punk themed, which is pretty innocuous. And then, like, you know, from there, he just sort of said yes. And I'm not sure of his status and a lot of things like that. I know one mate of mine who does photography, and he was doing a real estate job. And basically they asked him to take photos of a school because it's near a school. This house is near a school. He's like, oh, mate, when the kid's coming out, if you can take some photos of the school, that'd be great. And he's like, I'm not taking photos of children to school. I'm just not going to do it.
It's actually a criminal offence, and we talked about this earlier this week. Yeah, it's actually.
But even so, like you just wouldn't do it.
You would need the approval of the school. That'd be the hardest thing to get, and then you would need the logistically more difficult thing of obtaining releases from every student that you photograph.
Tiny little signatures, child signatures.
This is why schools will send parents to please. Sign over the rights to your children when we photograph them and put them in magazines and what have you.
It's fucked up, though. Like, basically this guy who somewhat did the wrong thing, but...
He's a National Geographic photographer.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, he said that, yeah.
And he really has no history of this kind of work. And so he's kind of walked in there and, I guess when he's seen a sad-looking child holding a bondage bear handbag, he's going, well, this is weird, but, it's just these
work's
people.
Work.
Yeah. These people. And so basically, he may work again, but he's not going to be working for a while.
Well, according to this, he's been inundated with hate mail and death threats, had jobs cancelled, and his personal details, including his phone number, has been published online. And this is a quote from it that says, at the moment, nobody wants to be associated with my name because my name is associated with the word pedophilia everywhere. I've been working on my personal projects for 25 years and then everything is destroyed by this campaign. I'm not sleeping well. My family is completely worried.
Oh, and so they should be because, this is where we're going to veer off from the MSM version and now into Cookers because Cookers have just gone absolutely apeshit crazy about this. I mean, everyone's likely to be offended by it once they've seen the photographs and go, what are these people thinking? Are they trying to shock us to this point? I mean, what is the other stuff? I mean, fucking Yee walking around with his White Lives Matter T-shirts. This is what this world is all about.
Yeah, that's actually a really good parallel and a really interesting point.
So it's designed to fucking shock. I mean, what was the company? I think that they were was it Benetton?
Benetton, I don't know. Do they do anything shocking?
With their Povo shoots and things like that.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So this is this world. But then it's sort of crept into the fringes now.
Yeah.
And the fringes aren't just they do not have the same level of tolerance that you and I do, Joel.
No, and they don't have the same level of like the idea of sort of culture and things like
ability to be objective and rational.
They don't get art. And you know what? The thing about art is you're meant to be able to look at it and you're meant to have thoughts on it. And when it comes down to the right and the, sort of QAnon right, you're not allowed to have thoughts. Basically, it's pedophilia. And if you have any reason to think that like a kid holding a bondage bear is cool, that means implicitly you fuck children. And it's like, no, it might mean that you see some kind of interesting message behind it or something like that. Personally, I don't like it. But that's not for me to impose on others. But of course, the QAnon playbook is to impose your beliefs on others and shame them if they disagree with you. Total cancel culture, as you fucking said. So they have baked this really hard because one other thing about QAnon guys, and QAnon I'm using is a very generic term, but it's like using the word cook but American basically. And they have to bake the shit out of everything to find as much stuff as possible because especially if they're the one that find it, it gives them that sort of cred and the clout because like I said before, this entire thing is built on clout chasing. This isn't about the kids. This is about getting clout on the internet and causing hysteria that you can then say, I did that. That was me and I'm fucking smart. And it's just, it's a complete fucking circle jerk. But we have this fucking genius out there who for some reason put Balenciaga, 3 words, B-A-A-L-E-N-C-I and then A-G-A into Google Translate, which detected as Latin and translated as Baal is the king. And the Baal of this was spelt with 2 A's.
Yeah.
Isn't like Balenciaga. Balenciaga has 1 A.
The same.
Why?
Not the same.
Why? So just to give a bit of an idea.
Baal is Latin, what do we got? Ancient Roman god of fertility?
Ancient god of fertility, and according to Wikipedia, the god of fertility, weather, rain, wind, lightning, seasons, war, and sailors.
And pedophiles.
Yes, well, sailors may be pedophiles, and I've heard that sailors in the off-season live in buildings. So explain that one, guys.
There you go.
Fucking explain that one.
Yeah, so Bale, that's it. So Bale, that's the only connection we've got. Bale. It goes on.
Yeah, so we've got this sort of Google Translate thing, which is fucking stupid.
Yeah.
And
Guys,
Snopes had a little bit of a look at it.
The
Latin scholars are coming out being like, no, this is wrong. Fucking shut up. It looks like Google Translate is
conjugating it all wrong.
Exactly, because they're Latin scholars and they're like that. Like, you know, no sense of humor whatsoever. But it was pretty funny. They were really kicking and screaming. I saw it on Twitter. I couldn't find the tweet. But according to Snopes, which I lazily grabbed from this, Biden-Enciaga became go ahead and do it, which screams Biden, to be honest. I think it's quite prophetic. And Donald-Enciaga came out as don't act like a king, which is perfect as well.
Message is there for everyone.
But are those messages not perfect? I mean, go ahead and do it is Biden. Biden's like frontal lobe just doesn't work. And Donald does act like a king and he shouldn't. I just think that's great.
Romanus aeon domum. People called Romans, they go the house. You remember,
yes.
That's with the Latins, with the centurion who was also a Latin scholar.
I mean, look, you know, this is just sort of the way it is. But it's just gibberish. You know, they're viral tweets now, they're screen captures, they're TikTok videos, and they're a part of the whole satanic panic. You know? Just is what it is.
Yeah, and we're going to get on to Balenciaga. Who owns it, Joel? Because
Kering. Who the fuck are Kering? Well, apparently it's owned partially. It's a family thing and run by a guy named Francois Henry Pinault.
And you know why he's famous today, Joel?
Why is that?
He's the world's wealthiest man, having we're not counting Vladimir Putin, having stepped over Elon today.
Has he? Yeah. Today? Oh, congratulations, Francois. These are reasons why I have no time for you whatsoever. The richer you are, the less I like you. It's a general scale.
Well, he's French, so he probably does it a little bit classier than, you know, your Trump-type billionaires. If he's a billionaire, he's probably not a billionaire.
He does, and he expresses that by owning companies that use children as props in art displays. So that's cool. But, he's married to Salma Hayek. So now she's getting shit on by QAnon dorks.
Done well for himself. Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm sure it's all about love.
I'm sure it is all about love.
Just sign here and initial there.
Yes. Okay, now here's your helicopter. Yeah. Yeah. I can only imagine what goes on behind the scenes there. Jesus Christ, rich people are weird. So Kering, this parent company, also owns Christie's, the auction house, which often sells art. It's pretty standard. So you had these QAnon fuckwits going through Christie's auctions to try and find something to be upset about, and they found one, which is that Christie's was selling some fucked up artworks by Jake and Dinos Chapman, otherwise known as the Brothers Grimm, and they are really grim. There is one of these pieces they found was called Fuckface, which depicts a child with a penis for a face and a giant, like, sucking hole for a mouth. It's confronting. It's not my cup of tea, but like I say, you know, like I'm not necessarily here to stop art from happening.
It's not art, Joel.
It's
not art.
It's pretty bad.
If it's art, it would have a horse in it.
Well, yeah, or maybe some trees. But yeah. And like there was another one, I think it was called Dick Shitter, which had children and like these like assholes for arms with like dicks being shit out of them. Like
I'm looking at some of their work now. It's
fucked in the head.
It's a little bit unpleasant. Yeah.
It's fucked in the head.
Lots of Nazi stuff. In fact, they've got swastikas here.
They do. They paint over Hitler pieces. And there's all sorts of stuff like that, but it's all shock value stuff. It's not necessarily that these guys are evil. I think that Blair Cottrell's more evil than these guys who make fuckface because he's an actual Nazi and a genuinely bad person. Whereas these guys are just like shock troopers in a dumb cultural parade.
It is.
I don't like them, but
it is dumb. It is dumb. It is dumb, and
it's incredibly meticulously well done. Yeah, overpaid clowns. Yeah.
For their works, and surely it certainly doesn't focus on children looking at their sort of collected works.
There's heaps of stuff, but of course they just find the one thing that pertains to this whole kiddie fiddler satanic panic, and they run with it. But that's the thing. Like, you know, I don't have a huge amount of sympathy for someone who puts themselves out that hard because these pieces of work are like, I haven't seen anything like it before.
Well, we haven't even mentioned Bill Henson yet. I know he's not part of this story, but you remember the great amount of hand wringing that went on around Bill Henson, who's a photographer who actually also photographs naked children. Yeah, and we got to the point where the Wallopers were removing the artworks off a gallery out of an exhibition. People, of course, have Hensons. I know Malcolm Turnbull has one.
Ooh, they'd love to call him a pedo.
No. It's not about that. I mean, the guy's it
is for them.
Highly skilled artistic photographer.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why people collect Hensons.
Yes, but don't think for a second that saying Malcolm Turnbull has a Henson, the guy that photographs nudes, isn't a QAnon headline.
But not all Henson's photography is of children.
Of course. You're just forgetting the fact that these people will make reaching noises and then completely deny any of the obvious that underpins it. Yeah. It could be a picture of a fucking tree that Henson took. They'll still be like, he's got pedophile pictures at his house, because they're idiots.
And the coppers were just nuts about this stuff.
Oh, of course they were.
And they just went, it's fucking child pornography. Oi, what's all this then?
I would imagine that a lot of police are very similar to QAnon people, very keen for this. Not really. I mean, they've just
been told, all right, we're going to go down and pick up some pornography, some child pornography that's dressed up as art by some fucking jumped up fucking photographer. Let's go and get them and put the black sheets over them so the people don't have to watch them.
Yes,
don't have to see them being carted out.
The ones who paid to see them don't have to see them.
Well, as they were dragging them out to the street, they covered them all. So really? just in case innocent people could be have their minds polluted.
Yes, exactly. I mean, look, and it really is. It's quite farcical, but anyway, at the same time,
it's not really relevant. But it was the same kind of. Well, it wasn't. It was probably what's interesting is that it was pre-QAnon, and
it was,
and so we didn't have this real mad stuff.
It was just a basic moral panic as opposed to the terrifying online lunatic cult panic that we're getting from this. Mm-hmm. So we'll move on to basically the reaction because this has all happened. We have these campaigns. They've happened. Balenciaga's backtracked, but at the same time, they're not really going to change too much. They might just stop using children because they've just realized that QAnon and that general conspiracy universe are going to single out examples of child exploitation and freak the fuck out about them. So now we can't really fuck with kids. Maybe they'll just start, I don't know, shitting on teenagers now or something. But Lockie Kavanagh, who you may know, he's a right-wing parasite who put up a table in Victoria Park, a table that I now own, by the way, that took on the Stephen Crowder meme format of "It's okay to be white, change my mind" on Australia Day, which is during this Yabun festival, which is more of an invasion day, like an indigenous sort of festival to celebrate, that they're still alive. And he decided to get some high-vis clothing on and hassle some Balenciaga workers, which was really good for society. And I'm so fucking glad he exists.
Yeah, because he cares about the kids, mate.
Yeah, he cares so fucking much. So the Daily Mail posted it as tradies being... News posted it as being tradies being slammed for hassling workers, but the Daily Mail ran with this headline instead, which is "Furious Aussie tradies storm into Balenciaga store and accuse workers and customers of supporting child abuse. You should all be ashamed."
You should all be ashamed.
Now, for starters, Lockie Kavanagh is a right-wing fucking agitator, but you chose to see the high-vis and run with tradies because you're disingenuous fucks.
It'll link better into our Balenciaga numbers, which are going through the roof. At the moment.
Exactly. We're having a great time with this. So, the high-vis gear is looking absolutely brand new. He probably bought it within the same shopping centre. So I'm guessing he's LARPing as a tradie. Maybe he does, sparky work that doesn't break a sweat. I don't know. I don't actually care. I don't like this guy. But he does like playing dress-ups, and people in this movement love using dress-ups to get a message across. This time was very effective because shitheads like the Daily Mail ran with it because they're fucking baseless and they suck. But this tradie headline did change the narrative. It really softened it because instead of the right-wing agitator line hassling award-wage workers because he's a fucking parasite, it was the noble tradie doing right by the kids because, he's just there to protect what's good and what's right. But another person has actually been seen, again in high-vis, defacing a Balenciaga store in London with a design that appears more like a logo than anything else, that says pedophilia, 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 and has these two sort of Ps. So it's got this sort of design to it. And although it was in high-vis, on the back it said JC Defoe, as in like deface, I'm guessing, as opposed to JC Deco, like, you know, the outdoor advertising company. So clearly this person who the Daily Mail referred to as an activist is some sort of artist who's probably trying to get clout from it as well, but at the same time doing it in a way that is a lot more considered than this, which is in LA at the Balenciaga store. They had stick figures of kids with "children are not sexual objects" and "not for sex," where the letter R is instead of R, and 4 is the number 4. So it actually looks like it was done by children. Possibly the same children in the shoots. I don't know. But the LA QAnon scene, they never send their best. They're just not smart people. They're fucking idiots.
I've seen various tweets, and we talked about the cancel stuff before. I mean, anyone who wears Balenciaga now must be seen as supporting pedophilia. It's a bold statement, isn't it?
It's just not true. It's just not true at all. But like, it is what it is. But of course, this
I'm wearing Balenciaga today just to show my support for child pornography.
What you're going to find is you're going to find a whole bunch of Balenciaga stuff being dumped in like third world, like, you know, developing countries, and all these kids wandering around in Balenciaga things that are 3 sizes too big for them.
Right. And all these kids in Uganda wearing Balenciaga.
All these fucking American QAnon dipshits being like, "Look at Uganda, it's the new child porn hellhole with Balenciaga exploiting them." Like, you know, the reality is they'd rather shred them than give them the pause, because those photos are really compromising for their brand, because we live in a capitalist society that fucking sucks.
Not want to drag our listeners, or indeed yourself, Joel, off on a tangent, but
we love one.
There's some big QAnon vibes about the arrests in Germany of the hard right group, including the
we've got to cover that next week.
Yeah, I know. But there are
news.
lots of QAnon vibes. In fact, he spouted speeches there that were straight out of the QAnon playbook, and Germany does have such a big number of QAnon cultists. I mean, that's what they are.
The Netherlands is fucking pilled as well.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy. And, like, I can't even really look at these sort of things because it's in Dutch. And, you know, Dutch is basically like the scrambled egg language. And, like, I look at it and I start feeling slightly ill.
It's almost English, but it's not quite English.
Sorry, Dutch people. Or Afrikaners as well. You're basically the same thing. But yeah, so basically, look, this has been one of those massive clout chasing opportunities. People who created this conspiracy theory, clout chasers. People who are running with it and trying to like spread it, clout chasers. The people who are trying to hassle fucking Balenciaga staff, clout chasers. I don't really care if Balenciaga stores are vandalized because billionaires can go fuck themselves. But at the same time,
they're all insured, Joe.
Exactly. Fuck them. Even if they're not
smash
insured.
a couple of windows, guys.
Just ask.
No.
Ask fucking Salma Hayek's mate some money. It'd be fine. But some asshole walked into a Balenciaga store wearing bondage gear, pretending to apply for a job. And I mean, like, what are you doing? This is a stunt because you want to increase your profile.
That's a bit of a chaser stunt, isn't it?
Yeah, but chaser do things that are funny and tasteful. This guy was a TikTok prat.
Yeah, I could see it on there. I could see it on the repertoire.
Yeah, but there's a big difference between the way they do this and the way I don't know.
No. Sometimes you get it wrong.
This guy got 2.2 million views. And now, I guess, has a basis to be more annoying because it's being rewarded by the fucking marketplace of fucking attention.
Yeah. Tucker Carlson's got been all over it too, Joel.
Oh, he's been all over it. I actually forgot to paste in some quotes that I thought I did paste.
Very concerned about Balenciaga as a company. And aren't the elites just pushing sexualizing children before our very eyes?
I just love Tucker Carlson
very
going about
concerned
elites.
about it all.
You're an elite, Tucker. You're an elite. You come from money and you're famous. Shut the fuck up.
The elites want you to rape your own children. Jesus, I mean, it's Christ. Just bizarre. But yeah, that's what I mean. I didn't mean to interrupt it, but apparently this was all sort of just going through to the keeper. When this catalogue came out, and people who shop in Balenciaga, fuck, I don't even really give a fuck. And apparently, some 14-year-old TikTok girl picked up on it, and that's what kicked it off. Next thing,
really?
Tucker Carlson is just looking very, very worried and angry. Let's not forget angry. And that's where it all kicked off from. So for weeks, literally, Balenciaga didn't think they had a problem. Everyone was just, oh, it's a beautiful shirt. Oh, it's a lovely shirt.
I love what this
I'd love to work with you again. It was just a joy. It was a joy out of my heart. Yeah, so you know all that sort of shit's going on together. I won't say cocaine, but there would have been expensive drinks. Put it that way.
Look, I'm not going to say there weren't expensive drugs there. It's a good time. But yeah, I mean, TikTok is full of pilled kids, so I'm not surprised this came around, and they're probably the same kind of people these things are.
That's BuzzFeed is reporting it, that I think 12 or 14-year-old girl as being the sort of genesis of the outrage.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Yeah,
not that it's necessarily not that she's responsible for what's happened afterwards, but she's the first one to go, "Hey, what the fuck?"
But that's the clout chasers. Everyone starts amplifying it because they want to be seen as, on sort of ground zero of the thing and a part of the thing. But I'll give you a tweet that I thought really summarized really nicely, which is from Ash Sarkar, who I have no idea. I was just searching Balenciaga on Twitter to see what was going on. That Balenciaga campaign was disgusting, but how it's being incorporated into a wider groomer's moral panic is itself frightening. If people really cared about safeguarding kids, the conversation about CSA would start with the fact that 93% of abusers aren't known to the victim.
Well, there is that.
And that is exactly it. This is just satanic panic. And it's not necessarily because they want to save the kids. They just want to create hysteria and drive people back from this sort of subversive left to this sort of safe arms of trusty conservatism. And I'm sorry, but
a lot to be said about that.
Those arms are racist. I'm not interested. I don't want a bar of it.
A lot to be said about that. The dragging back, this sense that conservatism, in a conservative world, none of this was possible. But there's also this. And they jump up and down on, as I say, not genuine conservatives, but the angry conservatives. They jump up and down about all this cancel culture and stuff. It's the first thing they do is just let's shut this company down.
Yeah,
let's anyone
burn
involved in
Balenciaga.
it must be persecuted. Yeah. Everyone must be named and shamed. And so, let's cancel them. I mean, that's the hashtag.
Yeah, cancel Balenciaga.
Cancel Balenciaga.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's just this sort of doublethink is ridiculous. I mean, look, this is a tangent as well, but I've seen a few tweets recently just in the discourse about how the Club Q shooter in Colorado Springs, their whole non-binary thing. And there are conservatives who genuinely believe that the shooter, who is on record as being a vicious homophobe and a fucking psycho who comes from a family of people with very similar beliefs, who came out and said, "Oh, I've got gender neutral pronouns, they them," which is obviously them taking the piss. Someone said that they were doing this shooting to have revenge at a community that had shunned them. So this person was genderqueer and found they'd been shunned by the community they're a part of, and then took vengeance on that. And I'm like, mate, how the fuck did you build this narrative in your dead shit head? Are you actually trying to believe this to protect the fact that the far right aren't violent? Or do you genuinely believe this because you're fucking stupid?
With
Either way,
spate, an absolute spate of spree shootings in gay nightclubs, in the United States.
It's not because the gays were mean to them.
It's just one of the others. So they're actually what they're trying to do there is to push away from a sense of blame.
They did the same thing with Q Sharman. They called him Antifa. He's not an anti-fascist.
Yeah.
Lynn Wood, throw him under the bus, and he was like, "Mr. Wood, I am Q, a non-digital soldier. Please don't say that.
Please don't make things worse for me than they already are."
He threw his fucking life away, and they fucking threw him under the bus. Anyway, look, Balenciaga's fucked. Art's fucked. Fashion's fucked.
Art is a bit fucked, yeah.
I just I got no time for these sort of things. I got no apologies for them. I mean, look, if you want to hear the artist explained, the mystery of the artist explained by Tism is a great place to start, which has the chorus, "I'm fucked in the head," and it really is. That is it. And the rest of the song is pretty meaningless, and then it's just, "I'm fucked in the head," and you're like, yes, you are fucked in the head. And they played that on the weekend, which was
I know a lot of artists, and it's true.
Generally speaking.
So you're absolutely right. Artists are just, I mean, I've met quite a few, and they're strange. They're a bit strange.
Yeah. They're built differently, and that's okay because we're not about cancel culture.
Yeah.
As opposed to the right, who are fucking
if they step out of line, cancel them.
Exactly. Well, I think we're rambling now, so let's wrap it up.
Yes, indeed. And thank you, patrons, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Love your work, guys. Thank you so much for helping out. Cheers.
I don't think I ever want to talk to any of those people.